seminary, I was in a degree program that gave me a lot of latitude in designing my choices of what to study. So I decided to ask two of my professors to engage with me in an independent study. The first one I approached was John, an ethics professor, because ethics was my main interest. I proposed meeting him 1 hour a week for 1 or 2 credits to fill in some gaps in my understanding of social ethics. He didn't say yes, and he didn't say no. He said, "What's in it for me?" And I asked, "What do you want?" It turned out he was interested in expanding his understanding of economics as a key piece of social justice. So, John and I wound up spending 2 semesters in a fruitful and rewarding reciprocal tutorial suggesting and asking about areas where we needed to learn more. The most fun question I got from him was when he asked me to explain money. The other professor was my advisor, Steve. I had already taken the required 2 semesters of Bible, both Old Testament or more correctly, Hebrew Scriptures. But I felt a need to include something from the New Testament in my program. I scratched my head. I didn't think Revelation belonged in the Bible, and I wasn't particularly fond of Paul, so that sort of narrowed it down to the Gospels. And to me, the most interesting part of the Gospels was always the parables, the teaching stories that were a rich tradition in Judaism. I knew Steve taught a class in parables for preachers, so I asked him, "Would you supervise me as kind of a student teacher of the parables?" My class would be back in Clemson, about 8 women, some Christian, some UU, for a Friday afternoon that we had already named Wine and Parables. We would meet every week for 10 weeks to discuss the parable of the week. And just like his ethics colleague, Steve said, "What's in it for me?" I'm beginning to think that maybe this wasn't a seminary. And I responded again, "What do you want?" The answer was he wanted contemporary examples of the parables in literature, film, music, and other places to take to his students in the parables class. So I carried that proposal back to my 8 friends, and they all agreed. It was an amazingly rich experience. The mysterious Steve was always in the background of our weekly conversation. Each week, he and I discussed the upcoming parable and the previous week's encounter with my class, especially their offering of examples. My favorite offering was the song "Return of the Prodigal Daughter" by Michelle Schacht. That was a good one. A wise woman once reminded me that the first rule in teaching and preaching is to start where people are. Finding an answer to that question, what's in it for me, is an important part of where they are. Unitarian Universalist theologian James Luther Adams does remind us that we should indeed start where they are, but we should not leave them there. Instead, it is our task to lead one another along the path of transformation, one step at a time. Transformation is the mission of our faith, calling us into interdependence, to service, and to our better selves. We do not witness to our faith by what we say or what we believe, but by how we live our lives. So if you're being asked to do something, it's not a bad idea to pose that question. It turned out well for me when they did that. What's in it for me? Now, on the other hand, you may be the asker. And in that case, possibly personal transformation is not the best answer to offer. The question itself reflects the tension between individual and society and the particularly strong hold that individualism has on our faith tradition. Appealing to people's self-interest to coax them into being builders and sustainers of community may be an odd approach, with the hope that they'll not only benefit the community and strengthen their commitment, but also experience some enrichment and transformation as a byproduct. But your chances of getting to yes are greater if you frame your answer in terms of the person's gifts, talents, and interests, and how they might mesh with the needs of the community. Offering the right answer to that question is very important and valuable in asking people to commit any of their time and skills to anything. The right answer will suggest how working on a habitat house, leading a covenant group, serving on the board, or any other contribution to their congregation their favorite nonprofit, or some other community will enrich their lives. Yet we continue to rely on the soft sell of promising minimal demands rather than the mutual benefits for both the person and the community. President Kennedy, or at least his speechwriter, had it half right when he said, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country." Let's rewrite it. He's dead, he can't argue. Ask what your congregation or other community can do or is doing for you, and what in turn you can do for the community, and how are the two connected? Now, there's lots of things I'm not good at. Most of them are physical. I'm a lousy swimmer, an adequate singer, a somewhat better but still not very good dancer after 22 years of jazzercise. In fact, when I originally started on this sermon, I thought it was going to be about confronting my limitations, and I may do that on some other day. But instead, I was drawn into one of my useful skills, something I'm pretty good at. It's recruiting. It's convincing people not just that it is more blessed to give than to receive, but that giving is an important pathway to receiving, and also that they have some special gifts to offer. Matching gifts to niches is like running a dating service for volunteers. I first discovered that skill back in the early 1980s when I was the chair of the nominating committee for the Clemson League of Women Voters, and we were struggling to find a new president. So I identified 6 candidates who didn't know they were candidates and invited them to my house to discuss the search for a president. Over wine, of course. It always helps to lubricate that kind of conversation. One by one, they said, "I don't think I can do president, but I would be glad to do voter service, treasurer, program planning, membership." So finally I got to Linda, who said, "Well, with that kind of board, I guess I can be president." She was a great president. Over the intervening years, I have had a lot of opportunities to put that skill to good use. In January 2020, when I rejoined the UUFC board after a 14-year absence, my duty as president-elect included chairing the nominating committee. I went to work, and with the good help of the nominating committee, we managed to fill most of the extensive vacancies that had accumulated over the preceding few years. In 2014, I was asked to be treasurer of my homeowners association. I know people think economist, treasurer. It really doesn't work that way. I was an okay treasurer, but I found it, frankly, rather dull. So my 2-year term was about to expire, and the nominating committee, assuming I would just want to do 2 more years as treasurer, asked my friend Sandy to be the next president. Sandy said, "No, but if you ask Holley to be president, I'll be treasurer." I had been president of 9 organizations, and he had an equally long resume as treasurer, being a retired business manager of a real estate firm. So my round peg was redirected to a round hole, and she fit her square peg comfortably in a square hole. And now here's where I'm going to embarrass Bing. We had a near miss here at UUFC when a previous nominating committee invited Bing to become president-elect. He said no. That ended the conversation. It was only when he told a friend who got the word back to the nominating committee that what he really wanted to be was the CFO that we got him where he needed to be, and he did a fabulous job. Thank you, Bing. Dan Hotchkiss, in his book, Governance and Ministry, says that organized religion is something of an oxymoron. Religion calls us from life as it is to life as it should be, whereas organizations are inherently conservative. Organizations usually have enough visionaries and enthusiasts like me, but they also need people who are good at detail and who enjoy work that requires a narrower focus and greater depth. The personality types attracted to Unitarian Universalism tend to be strong on the big picture, creative types, as well as the analytical, rational types. But sometimes a little short in other departments, like detail and caregiving. We have more potential presidents than treasurers. That shortage of detail people makes it even more important to, in military language, identify and deploy those talents, as well as develop those skills in doing the work of congregational life. People join congregations because they think they know what's in it for them, a community of mutual support, a place that challenges and affirms and supports their search for truth and meaning. But most of them do not enjoy do not join in order to serve on a committee and attend meetings. And as they transition from visitor to member, or as members who have been busy raising children and working at a job, to empty nests and retirement, we need to offer some satisfying opportunities to use the gifts that either they were born with or that they have developed in the course of their lives. We need to make it clear that in a network of mutuality, what's in it for them is also what's in it for the rest of us. If you are not the recruiter but the recruitee, you too have a responsibility to ask yourself and the person inviting you to serve, what's in it for me? How will this help me to be a better person, to feel more part of the community, to use my particular skills and gifts and interests in ways that will enrich both me and the community? UUs are very fond of the word community. Its Latin meaning is literally build together. Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, the chief rabbi of the United Kingdom, has written a wonderful book called The House We Build Together. In that book, he focuses on how a nation can build community out of diversity. People who come from different places, practice different religions, pursue different goals, and bring different gifts. He is himself a case in point because he insists he is totally Jewish and totally British. It is in the day-to-day working together that families, congregations, neighbors, and other communities learn to love, to give, to share, and to feel grounded and supported and affirmed and challenged. And at the same time, respect differences, not just as challenges, but as opportunities to learn and teach. We UUs claim to be very proud of diversity, especially theological diversity. Any kind of diversity is both a gift and a challenge. Too often we fall back on the organized part instead of the religion part of our faith communities by seeking out those others who are more like us than otherwise. We fail to see the strength that a broad measure of diversity would bring to our shared responsible search for truth and meaning, social justice and democracy, and openness to change. Most of you have been UU long enough to know about the elevator speech. If you don't, just ask me about it after the service. This is basically the premise of the elevator speech is you're in an elevator wearing a UU t-shirt and somebody says, Unitarian Universalism, what's that? And you have 25 seconds before you get to your floor to explain what it means to be a Unitarian Universalist. So when we used to go to leadership school, one of the things we had to do was write our elevator speech. But once new people sit in, they've heard the elevator speech, it's not time for a second elevator speech. It's time for what I'd like to call a train speech. Trains move more slowly and have shorter breaks between stops. That conversation may begin by gently suggesting that he or she has some gifts that would be appreciated and valued in the congregation, and the person you're talking to comes back with that question, what's in it for me? Like your elevator witness, your train talk should come from the heart and begin with, this is what my congregation has done for me to enrich my life, expand my horizons, engage me in the work of building community, both within and beyond the congregation. And then turn the tables. What kinds of things do you gravitate to in a group? What role have you played in other volunteer organizations? What do you like to do? How might this community enrich your life even as you enrich this community? We've all been trained from childhood to experience life as a series of multiple choice tests. So maybe the best way to help someone discern what they might be willing to do is to offer a menu of options. My daughter had little time to give this congregation when they asked her to serve as treasurer, but she agreed to serve on the audit committee, or Bing, whom I've already picked on, who turned down president-elect because he wanted to be CFO. So, I'm a recruiter. What's in it for me? Here's my train speech. I enjoy being part of a faith community that challenges and affirms me, that makes me feel connected and valued. I want that congregation to survive and thrive and be there for my grandchildren's generation. Like the little drummer boy, my question is, what can I give? Money, time, skills. I have a number of skills, but my favorite skill is recruiting. I don't ask yes or no questions. I try to explore with a person what she or he enjoys doing, is skilled at, and where those qualities might find a place in what the congregation needs. So when someone asks you to do something or you ask somebody else, the question of what's in it for me is always present, spoken or not. As an evangelist for your faith community, be prepared to offer your personal answer and to invite them to do the same. It will enrich you both, and it will enrich our faith community. Amen, and blessed